Hi, Amy. Hi, everybody in Tamworth. It's lovely to be with you. Sorry about the quality of the light in here is not great at the moment, so I'm sorry if I'm sort of looking a little bit fuzzy and hazy. But it's great to be with you, and I'm very happy to answer your questions. I hope all is well with all of you. How we're coping in lockdown. Well, I guess we're coping pretty much the same as everybody else at the moment. Staying at home pretty much all of the time, apart from I do a grocery run I'm trying to limit that to every couple of weeks. My husband and I go for walks around the suburb, and it's lovely. Everybody's really friendly and saying hello, but keeping their distance, which is important. Um, we've been doing quite a lot of tidying up. I've been baking a bit. And I guess doing quite a lot of reading. And for me, this is actually a bit of a bonus time to be able to do a lot more writing than I would normally be doing, because I was supposed to be sort of flying off all over the countryside at the moment doing events. So yeah, we're coping just fine, and trying to see the positives in it, really. Speaking to our friends overseas quite a lot more than we normally would, and catching up with our family for Zoom dinners, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's all fine for us. Yeah, so I grew up in the southwest of Sydney. When I was very small, I lived in the garage at my grandparents' place with my parents, and then they built a new house, and we moved out to Ingleburn, which was a pretty new suburb back in those days. We lived in Ingleburn until I was in fourth grade, and then we moved to Camden. So basically, spent most of my childhood in that area, though. And my experience of reading and writing, well, I always remember having books as a child, and my favourite ever uh, excursion for the week was always going with my mum to the library. I particularly have very strong recollections of going to the library in Ingleburn when I was very small, probably only about 3 or 4, and having my own library card. And that was the highlight of the week for me. And I can still, you go into a library and there's a certain smell about the books, and I always loved that smell, and loved that the librarian would help me find books that would take me on adventures all over the world, even though I was, pretty much stuck in the southwest of southwestern suburbs of Sydney. So yeah, I had great experiences of reading as a child, and it was a valued thing in my family. Books were often given as gifts, and I think that really helped to sort of form my own views of reading as I grew up. Yeah, so I left school, as in my job in a school, at the end of 2012 to become a full time writer, and it was a really hard choice. It was a really hard thing to do because school is very safe. School is a very consistent sort of a job. You kind of know what you're doing from one year to the next. Often there are celebrations that you're going to have every single year. Although I was always one of those teachers that I like to mix it up quite a bit. I always was trying to invent new programs and make sure that the kids were really excited and that I was really excited about what they were learning. But yes, it was a hard decision because as a writer, you don't get paid. You get paid twice a year from your royalties, so you've then got to work out other ways that you're going to make money in between times, and that sort of thing. But it's a decision that I made, I guess, quite calculated. I knew about sort of what I had to have done and what I was aiming for, and then that I'd be able to go off and write full time. And honestly, I have not looked back. It's been a fantastic decision, and I feel very blessed to be able to do this, to be a writer, as my full time job. Well, reading is really important for kids and for adults. Reading is something that we need in our daily lives. We need to be able to read, signs and medicine bottles and newspapers and be able to fill out forms, that kind of thing. So, reading from a purely practical point of view is extremely important. But reading is also bigger than that as well. It has the capacity to be able to take you to other places. Like I said, I was a little girl in the southwestern suburbs, but I grew up on a diet of Heidi, going to the Swiss Alps and not actually going there until I was 36. So I think reading it's about empathy. It's about developing empathy, escapism, knowledge, being able to travel the world, being able to do lots of different things from the confines of your own home. And at the moment, we're all pretty confined to our own home. So, I think reading has never played a more important part in our lives than right at this minute. I think choice is important for kids. Kids need to be able to look at a book and think, oh, that I want to read that book. Obviously, you want to guide your children into increasingly more difficult reading. I think it's great for them to find the things that they love that get them into reading, but also then to possibly, bump and encourage them to other more challenging texts. I do get concerned when I see some children, older primary children who are still reading books that I think, really that's sort of like a year 2, year 3 level book. And while they might enjoy it, and certainly, that's just purely for fun stories, I think it's also important to try and increase the reading level, if you like, as kids get, a bit older and more mature. I think with reading, as I said earlier, my parents used to give us books as gifts, and so showing that books are really valued is another way to try and get your kids, interested and keen on stories. I think, stories and reading with your child is a great way to encourage them into a story. Maybe it's a little bit too difficult, so if you read a page and they read half a page to you, or I actually am a really big advocate of just because your children can read for themselves, don't stop reading to them. I think there is nothing better than a shared story. Yes, it's true that Alice-Miranda, the idea, I first of all thought I would write a picture book about a little girl who went to boarding school, but it very quickly became apparent that she had a lot more to say, and here we are now, 18 books later, and the 19th book is coming out in June. It's called Alice-Miranda in the Outback, so it's a very Australian adventure, and I'm super excited for readers to be able to read that one. So she, I guess, first of all, I kind of thought, it would just be a very short story, but yeah, evidently not. And I'm going to write at least 20 of the Alice-Miranda books. And she's also been made into a movie, which is really exciting. Alice-Miranda Friends Forever came out at the end of last year with SLR Productions. It's a production between SLR Productions in Australia, Channel 9, Stan, and Screen Australia. And currently the second Alice-Miranda Alice-Miranda movie is in production, so it's called Alice-Miranda: A Royal Christmas Ball, and will be out at the end of the year too. So yeah, she's been really busy. Yes, so I have had 3 different series on the go at the same time. I've actually just finished writing Clementine Rose, though, so we got to the 15th book in Clementine Rose, with the ironic title of Clementine Rose and the Best News Yet. I don't know that it was the best news because it's the last book, but that's a series that I've absolutely adored writing. Interestingly, yeah, it is a juggle. When you've got 3 things going at the same time, then a lot of the time you're editing one and trying to write another one. I found that it was really tricky to. I could edit Clemmy, I could write Clemmy and be editing Alice-Miranda or Kenzie and Max, but I couldn't be writing Kenzie and Max and Alice-Miranda at the same time. It's just too difficult to keep track of all the characters in my mind. So it is a bit of a juggling act, but I worked very strictly to deadlines and schedules, and I kind of know what I'm doing across the whole year, so that's been really helpful. So my stories have been inspired by lots of different things, from my own travels, from being a teacher for a long time. There's definitely there's lots of kids who've inspired ideas for stories. I guess having different situations in school, that's something that always is very inspirational. Family and friends, they often I might see something or hear something, I think, oh, that'd make a good idea for a story. Definitely travel. Travel's great, and sometimes I will read something in a newspaper or in a magazine, and I'll think, oh, that's not a bad idea for a story too. So really, the ideas can come from all over the place. Yeah, I am pretty strict about schedules and things, mainly because I have been writing a lot of books. So in the last 10 years since Alice-Miranda came out, I've written, 18, 19 Alice-Miranda books. The 19th one comes out soon. I've written 5 Kenzie and Maxes and 15 Clementine Roses. So it's been a really busy time. I tend to, what I do is I put everything into the Outlook calendar and I look at how many days do I have to write a story and how many words do I have to write each day to meet that deadline. So yeah, I am strict with myself, and I'll start work in the morning, and if I know I've got to write 2,000 words today, or if I've got to write 3,000 words today, or sometimes, heaven forbid, but it's even more, then I'll pretty much just keep going until I get that done. So it's just sort of how it has to be. And to be very honest, I feel absolutely blessed that I have had deadlines and schedules, because I know what I'm doing often quite far into the future, and that's a real privilege as a writer. I don't really tend to have favourite authors so much as I go through phases where I really get onto something and I love it. I might go through a historical fiction phase where I read loads and loads of books, set in medieval England, or I go through thriller stages. When I was a child, my favourite book in the world was Heidi, and the other book that I loved was Black Beauty. I also read lots and lots of Enid Blyton when I was a kid. But yeah, as an adult, I tend to read quite widely and quite different books. So sometimes I'll read, I love a lot of Ian McEwan books. Absolutely, as I said, love a thriller, love a bit of romantic comedy. Just sort of depends what mood I'm in, really. I just finished reading Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and I really enjoyed it. It was a fantastic read. I highly recommend it to the listeners out there. Yeah, and at the moment now, I must be the only person in the country who hasn't read this, but I've just started Trent Dalton's absolute massive bestseller, Boy Swallows Universe. So I'm just in the first few pages of that. Yeah, so I think it's important in my role as an author that where I can help with charitable organisations that I do. So I have, a few things that I do, but mostly I'm an an author ambassador for Room to Read, which is a fabulous organisation which provides books and libraries to children in developing countries all around the world. And I love, one of the things that they do really well is that they provide local language books for a lot of the students. They work a lot with girls too, and they really there's a real push about girls' education. And if you educate the girl, then you change the whole life of the village. That kind of philosophy. So it's a real honour to work with Room to Read. And on a local level, I absolutely love working with Dymocks Children's Charities. So I'm an ambassador for the charity, and Dymocks Children's Charities is, well, it's called Dymocks Children's Charities, but it's actually an offshoot of, it's really not got anything to do with the bookshop in a way. It is an organisation that's quite independent, that they look to raise money to get books into the hands of children who really don't have books. And I know it's a horrifying thought that in Australia in this day and age that there would be kids in that situation, but there most certainly are. And yeah, that's a really troubling thing for me. I love when we go and do, book bonus, or we do library regeneration. I love being able to go and see the kids and see the books in their hands, and just know that maybe there's one book in amongst all of that will turn that child onto being a reader. So yeah, it's they're really worthwhile things to be involved with, and yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed being able to chat with you today, and I wish everybody in the Tamworth region all the very best. Stay locked down for the moment, and I'm sure we'll get through this thing. We'll get through this thing together. And in the meantime, enjoy your reading. And I know the library is there, ready to help you with all your selections.